On radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the big1050.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and it is MGoBlog Roundtable time. And fellas, welcome back. As Ira said, you didn't get Wally pipped. You did not get replaced, as Ward was only here for one. He only filled in for you 1 week, guys. You couldn't be replaced by Ward Manuel. He was only a fill-in. You guys were on vacation last week. That's why Ward was here last week. Seth Fisher, how you doing this morning?
I do, and I want to thank Ward once again for filling in for us last week. That was a great thing he did for us, and I appreciate it. Ward, if you ever need me to fill in for you in your job ever, I'm happy to step in.
That's Craig Ross, how are you this morning?
I'm in. It's 3 freaking a.m. Yeah, I'm doing fine.
But you're in Hawaii. I mean, there are a lot worse places to be at 3 a.m.
And that's true, and it's beautiful here right now.
So I think it's a beautiful time of year because we can look forward with great anticipation to Hail to the Victors, Seth. So tell the folks all about it.
Hail the Victors 2025. We are doing the book again, the preview book. Last year, we took a year off to do the 2023 yearbook, which you can buy with Hail the Victors 2025, the preview and feature magazine by MGoBlog. Just go to mgoblog.com/25. We got an article by Sam Webb in there about how we got Bryce Underwood. We got a whole bunch of other articles about Bryce Underwood. I kind of had to pull us back a bit and say, all right,
and then more Bryce Underwood articles. Craig Rush, right? Craig wrote something from the 1800s, I'm assuming.
I did.
Yes, Craig's article. That's the one that Sam and I didn't get into on Monday. Craig's article is really interesting. He's been doing every year, like from the beginning of college football to Yost, and we're getting really close to Yost now. So he gets to 1898, and he split up the 1898 article into 2 articles. So this is gonna be the first one, which is like the 1898 off season, where we invent the idea of an AD, right, Craig?
That's correct. Yeah, we end up with an AD because it's interesting because Michigan was way behind on this to some extent, at least in relation to the competition, which was probably Oberlin College and University of Chicago. And I think, as I've mentioned before, University of Chicago was a university founded on the back of a football team, and Rockefeller realized he couldn't compete with Leland Stanford, so he created a football team, brought in an athletic director, Amos Alonzo Stagg, who was also the football coach, and on the back of that, they created a university. Michigan was just a bunch of guys, and one visionary, Charles Baird, who was a student, and Charles Baird eventually became student manager, and then sort of student manager in absentia. He was working in Chicago and Columbus, Ohio in his law practice, but still sort of controlling things. And then eventually became the AD.
And he was also courting the daughter of like a magnate, of like a super, super rich dude. And so I think part of it too is, and you get in this in the article, is that he had to impress the father-in-law of his prospective bride, who was like, "What are you doing for a career?" Well, I'm going to do this. I'm doing this stuff on the side for Michigan, but really, so Michigan not only had to come up with the athletic director job to get him to leave his law firm, they had to come up with a real job that would impress the prospective father-in-law. Right, because to everybody at that time, a manager of an athletic director was nothing. That was a kid who had just recently graduated, who was hanging around and like helping them schedule and stuff. Right, that's not a real job. And so they came up with a real job. And I love the interplay that you talk about in this article, because you talk about Chicago and like where their position was. They were way out ahead of the game. They knew exactly how the game was played. And how it was going to be played in the 20th century, where football is really the front porch for your university. And they were putting money and resources into it, and Chicago was running the show. Right? Everyone needed to come to Chicago just to afford their season, because one game there is how you pay for your football program. So he got to run everything. And he loved Michigan because Michigan had a good team because they had so many students that you could field a good team just by grabbing all those students, right? Just like out of a numbers game. But Michigan followed the rules, and Michigan in 1898 they self-punished themselves for having a guy who was playing illegally, and I'm glad no one's looked back on that because those are some wins that probably could have been vacated at those times. That would have been the hammer. That was the time. Ohio State fans, if you're out there, 1898, go back and look.
Honey Stewart.
Yeah.
Honey Stewart was the player.
We need to deserve the hammer.
But as I suggested, that alphabetical order hadn't been invented yet, so they couldn't check the student rolls to see if this guy Honey Stewart
comments in the chat in 5.
You're right. They don't know what statute of limitations are, right? I'm assuming they don't know what that means.
Insane. I mean, they are legitimately insane.
It's coming. It's coming, Sam. That 1897 hammer for what Michigan did is the NCAA is all over this. It'll be coming now. Hey, just wait. Stay by your computers. It's coming.
Yeah.
Anyway,
just, for the record,
stay by your 1897 computer.
The Ward comment on that last week was a follow up. He had actually made a similar comment the time prior, which was what, April, Ira, when he was on? I think it was April, when he offered basically at the prompting of a Buckeye who was in a chat much like this, who came in and said, oh, well, Webb doesn't have the guts to ask Ward about the hammer that's going to drop. And instigator, who was the producer that day? It was Ben. Ben was the producer. He must have known. He must have been in the mood. He must have known that if he had put that before me, it was going to fire me up. And it said, yes, it sent me a note. Said, this Buckeye is saying you don't have the guts to ask Ward if the hammer is going to drop. I said, I don't, do I? I said, so Ward, is the hammer going to drop, Ward? Are you going to be vacating games? Is there going to be a postseason ban as it relates to this NCAA investigation? Right. And he actually answered the question. And he said there's been no discussion along those lines. And this is from a guy who has offered no comment. And no comment is like the typical answer that he gives to this line of questioning. And this particular occasion, he actually gave an answer. And so when he came in last week, as I anticipated, he gave that answer again. And I should have been more ready for the no comment. But in the moment, he gave the no comment. And I was like, man, I want to ask him a question that he gives an answer where he can't say no comment. And I was thinking, okay, let me phrase this question in a way, because he was just coming off the COI meeting. And so I knew he was probably primed to give a no comment. So let me think of a question where he's more likely to give an answer that's not no comment. So I was thinking on the fly, how can I ask this in a way where he can't do that? And as I did that, I'm looking over to the side as I'm thinking, and I asked the question. He doesn't. He gives me an answer again, but he says, I haven't had any questions or discussions along those lines. So no, from my perspective. The Buckeyes were like, oh, see, they're hiding something. Clearly, there's something in the works. You see how he's looking off to the side? There's something going on, and they know the hammer's about to drop. These people are nuts, man.
I don't
nothing like that.
I don't know, Sam. Do they get your show in Franklin County Jail?
Well, he's the number one guy, right? But he'll have to do his blog from the jail cell, I guess.
Yeah. Listen, just for the Buckeyes in general, what I will say is he offered comment on a topic where he doesn't typically comment.
Okay.
There is a message in that he's going out of his way to comment on that particular line of questioning. So that says to me that part, that hammer part, is fictional, imaginary, wet dream type stuff for Buckeyes. So moving on though, guys, I do wonder.
One second, Sam. Could I just say on Ward? He has taken a lot of criticism from Michigan fans, some on this show, and I've been a little less critical of him. I've been more forgiving because to me, it's been a lot of the stuff has been things that have happened have been murkier. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for some of the things that have been obviously good. But I want to credit Ward for coming out and doing these interviews. My criticism of Ward and the AD in general has been the lack of transparency, the sort of just, which to me leads to some of the criticisms which perhaps haven't been legitimate. And so Ward deserves major props for coming out and doing this interview with you. And he's done several now, at least 2, maybe 3. I don't know.
I think it's been 3. I think it's definitely obviously a change from in the past, a mindset that was very anti Dave Brandon. It's like, hey, play the background. You don't need to be very visible to, hey, there's a middle ground. There's a middle ground between Dave Brandon and not, letting people hear from you regularly at all.
Yeah. So I mean, Ward deserves credit for this, and thanks to you and to him for that interview in particular, which was enlightening in many ways. Anyway, I'm sorry, Sam, I interrupted you.
Yeah. So I do wonder what you guys think, and I don't want to dwell on this topic very long, but I did find it very curious when it came to the rules as it relates to revenue sharing, NIL. I was asking if the players had any say in it, and did he see that being on the horizon? And he said, well, I don't think the players had any say. And he said, I haven't even seen it. He said, ADs haven't even seen it. So I said, wow, ADs haven't even seen it? That strikes me as odd. So this is all being done at a super higher level, and they're going to pass it on down, which says to me, guys, the longer they continue that sort of process where they are dictating without having a sort of participatory process where the players have a voice in the process, we're going to keep having this litigation where players are continuously suing to have their voice be heard by force until that day comes where we have collective bargaining.
I mean, I think we've been saying that for a while. Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, I mean, the next round of this is probably going to be in Congress, right? I'm sure there's going to be more lawsuit or whatever, because as soon as they try to enforce this, you saw the state of Michigan, former Michigan State player in the Michigan legislature put out a bill, so you can tell that the game is not up, and it's hard for us to say okay, here's the new scenario, right? Here's the new field. Here's how we're going to play the game from now on, because I think it's still very much up in the air. And I think that there is a possibility for Congress to just give the NCAA everything they want, or there's a possibility that they run out the clock on this, or they give them everything they want and then it gets overturned by the Supreme Court, because you can't really take away people's right to make a living. There's so much legal stuff in there that it's like we get bogged down in this. We end up talking about it all summer, and then next year it's just going to be a whole different world again.
Yeah.
So
the day Ward came on was the day that there was a story about that bill being proposed right here in the state of Michigan that would have the clearinghouse rules basically be null and void. Schools in the state of Michigan wouldn't be able to follow them at all without being in violation of state law. So there's that, right? So interesting times, as they say, which kind of brings us, as we shift gears here a bit, to first want to get your thoughts on recruiting and how things are going on that front. Things seem to be picking up quite a bit. I don't know if any of those guys resonate with you, but you saw Michigan get a big time quarterback last year, and now things trending up on the recruiting front as they just got a top 10 receiver, and they are trending with another top 247 receiver as well. I think they're going to get him, kid Travis Johnson out of Virginia, coming up in a couple of weeks.
Man, I mean, you're the recruiting guy, so a lot of times we defer to you, but some of these guys I'm really excited about. I've been very much a Lou Esposito fan since I think 2018 when we played Western Michigan. I was like, who is coaching these defensive linemen? Because they were killing us, and Nebraska couldn't even do the things that their guys were doing. And then you look all over the NFL or the all over Power 5 roster, or whatever they are, Power Conference rosters now, and there's Western Michigan defensive linemen all over the place. So I knew Esposito had some juice to begin with. And who is the guy? Man, I'm blanking on the name now. There's the guy that they got out of Texas, I think.
Alistair Vallejo?
Yeah. Man, that dude is crazy. And I think he's still just a 3-star, but obviously everyone's like, okay, he's a 3-star now, but just wait. We're going to have another evaluation. But man, like the quotes about that guy are like the quotes about Mason Graham, right? This guy is just, he's incorrigible. Like that's the word that I want for a defensive tackler, right? Incorrigible. Like this guy, like I'm loving that recruit. And we just got Marky Walbridge out of Massachusetts, and we've seen that league before. That's the league that Zinter came out of. That's the league that Mullings came out of. And I remember we were watching Mullings and we were like, this guy looks really good. He's trampling over people. And like, of course he's trampling over people. It's the kids of MIT people, right? Like who are you trampling? Also, God, this is the most Massachusetts name I've ever heard. Marky Walbridge. Like, come on, man, we could have guessed. You don't even have to say Massachusetts. Everyone can guess. Like circle in Cambridge where this guy has got to be from.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, he looks really. I mean, long, really good feet, really good movement. Like that, you see a offensive lineman a lot. They all play tackle in high school, so you go and watch the tape, and you're like, okay, can this guy play tackle or not? And yes, like he's just got that length, he's got those feet. That it reminded me of Blake Frazier a little bit, where he has that athleticism. You're like, okay, he's at 260 now. You get that guy to 310, you really got something.
Yeah. It's. I mean, speaking of Blake Frazier, who we were with last week, he's just about 300 now. Said he's feeling good. He's healthy. I think he's gonna be the left tackle.
Yeah,
he's gonna be the left tackle.
Oh,
I do.
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
the
guy.
In terms of recruiting, I've only really looked at 2 guys at this point. It's harder and harder to look early to me on spend your time trying to evaluate a guy as best you can. But the 2 I've looked at, I liked, and he's not highly recruited, is a guy named Bear McWhirter. Is that his name? He's a 3-star, I think. But I believe Alabama offered him.
They did.
And I think
and got the Bear Bryant.
Yeah, I think he's a real player and has a chance to become a very good player in the Big Ten. So and that's the lower rated guy. And this Vallejos guy, I mean, I think you asked me about him before, and I said, wow, he's, you hate to say Mason Graham, but you look at him and that's the first name.
I mean, he's a baby face too.
I know.
Sometimes it writes itself. Okay, that guy, his comp is going to be Mason Graham. You never know, right? Like he could drop down the rankings or something could happen. I could go back and be like, oh no, he's Bowman or some Grant Bowman. Yeah. But like that
no offense, Grant.
I've copped people to Grant Bowman before, and I take heat for it because everyone's like, that's so long ago. I'm like, no, he's not. That's my age. Out of Brighton, that guy, that's a dude, man. He's just a small dude, right? And just
Grant's a Wall Street guy now. He's doing big things.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Some of the people in my class are doing more than I am. But like, yeah, Titan Davis is another guy that they got recently. Out of St. Louis, and you go look at that guy, and that's exactly the kind of defensive tackle that Michigan wasn't getting when we were like screaming our heads off about this in like 2019, 2018, right? Like they got Mozzie Smith and they got Hinton that 1 year, and then like there were no guys they got for a while around them, and we were mad because defensive tackle is one of those positions where you can kind of see it, right? Like if that guy is 270 pounds and he's already a really good defensive end and he's, got that length and he's got that burst, right? That first step off the line. And you can see he's just a buy guy. So, and we're starting to get a feel now for Lou Esposito's style. And I think that he's got these, remember, like it took a little while, and you're like, okay, I know what a Don Brown recruit looks like now.
Yeah,
I know what these guys are.
One of the things I wanted to touch on with you guys is sort of the philosophy. What your philosophy would be from a general manager perspective for how you would spend your NI, because this has to be a thing. Like you can't spend everywhere. You got to make a decision about where you're going to apply like the big money. If you're going to go all out big money to get like big time edges and big time quarterbacks and big time tackles, you might not be able to get big time corners or big time linebackers or big time receivers.
Are you talking about that 5-star edge who the super academic kid or whatever?
Yeah,
like
if you get the big time edge, maybe you gotta scale back on the big time linebacker. If you give the big time receiver, maybe you got to scale back on the big time corner. I'm not saying that
so we're not the first. Yeah,
I'm not saying that it has to happen that way, but I'm saying you got to think that there are real trade-offs that have to take place. So I do wonder if you had to trade, like for instance, if you were looking at defense and you had to make a decision between, all right, right now you're looking at the board and you got needs at corner, you got needs at linebacker left, and then you filled a lot of needs on the defensive line, but there is a big time 5-star edge still left out there. Even though you filled a lot of needs at that position, what do you do? Even though you have needs you got needs at corner and you got needs at linebacker, would you take maybe lower tiered linebackers to get big fish at edge, for instance, because you could get one and maybe take a lower tier linebacker? How would you approach that?
I'll tell you exactly how I'd approach this. I approach it like the Baltimore Ravens, because they have to deal with the salary cap too, and they have to make all these decisions. And the reason they came up with the amoeba defense that we adopted in the first place, because they were dealing with the same problem, right? Cap prices got really high for edges. It got super, because they realized, look, the only way that you can get around a quarterback who's just going to rip the crap out of you in the NFL is if you can get pressure on him. The only way to get pressure on him is get pressure around the edge. So left tackles got expensive and rush and pass rushing edges got expensive. And the Ravens are like, we can't. They had to replace both their edges 1 year, and they're like, we can't do it. We don't have the money to go into the free agent market and get a guy who's going to be a difference maker at the prices that we have to pay right now. So they had to come up with a different solution. And what they did is they actually spent a lot in the secondary. So when you ask, like, where do we put the money? Now, I think that an NFL structure is there's a lot more to it than just that, right? So it's not just getting new players. These are prospects, not necessarily players, right? They're not coming in, they're going to...
Correct.
So you have to think of them like prospects, and you have to rate them like prospects. So the first place I would put my money is in the best players, right? If you say, how much money do you have for this whole operation?
Yeah.
I'm Rayshon Benny, not the defense, not the 5-star defensive end. Okay, because that's the guy who's really going to affect you, and that's how they do it in the NFL, right? The guys who have done it, who've been there, who've shown it on the field, who are the leaders of your team, they get paid. And the other guys know if you come in and you do that, we're going to take care of you. And I think that that's the best way to run your organization. Now, as far as recruits and where you want to put your money positionally, it depends what kind of defense you run. We run the Ravens defense. And what do they do with that? They put a lot of money into the secondary because they got more bang for their buck that way. And a cornerback who can cover one-on-one without safety help, who can erase a guy like, like Ohio State has, right? If you have that capability, you have so many more things you can do defensively. Because that's what happens in the game. Everyone goes and looks at your roster and they go bum hunting, right?
Yeah.
They're looking for the guy that they can attack. And if you have somebody who they don't have a big advantage on like that, it gives you so many more options.
Yeah, see, I would spend big on a corner every year.
Mm-hmm.
I would spend big on one corner every year, man.
Yeah.
Even if I had to take away from someplace else, even if I had to take away from whatever other spot that had to be, I'm valuing edge, tackle, quarterback first, first, tackle, edge, and corner. I'm valuing those as my top sort of spending.
It comes down to who you are and what you can develop too, right? So if you have a defensive line coach that can get you some edges, because that's one of the things the Ravens did. They're like, look, we have all these linebacker coaches. We got Mike McDonald, we got Wake Martindale, we got linebacker coaches coming out of our ears. They spent less on linebacker. They used a first-round pick eventually on it, but that's still spending less, right? In the NFL, your picks are where you want to spend less money. So they took money out of linebacker, took money off of edge, and they got really big defensive tackles, and they put a lot of money into that secondary. And it's not just cornerback, right? If you have an all-star, say like a 5-star safety, look what Ohio State did with Caleb Downs. It took them they went through a lot of safeties to make up for the fact that they didn't recruit Rod Moore. But they finally, they went out, they spent. Caleb Downs was the most expensive guy in the portal, and he was that for a reason. And fortunately for Ohio State, that guy was willing to go with whoever was going to pay him the most money, and that's where he went. And then they won a pantsless championship. So that's a big way to improve your team. I'm not just saying in the portal, but like if you're looking at where you can get the most bang for your buck, especially with the system that we face and the rival that we have. What is Michigan's season judged on? Last year we had a terrible season last year until we went and beat Ohio State. Right? So if that's the value system of your program, and Ohio State is we got receivers coming out of our ears program, where do you spend your money? It's cornerback, right? You want to beat the team that's in front of you because that's the goal here.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think though you still have to distinguish revenue sharing from NIL, and how you spend your revenue sharing money, as I gather, is completely within the discretion of the system. How much money the football program has, for example, in relation to other programs is completely discretionary with the system. So if Michigan football goes out and says, hey, we need a couple 100,000 more to get this cornerback, and we ain't got it, well, maybe they take it from some other program. I don't know. This is the part that remains, unclear to me and is interesting to me, and I suspect will be the subject of a FOIA or various FOIAs on how much are you paying in revenue sharing dollars, player A versus player B versus the softball pitcher that they desperately need. So I don't know the answer to that. NIL is a different story. Joe Lynn Ellison wants to come in and pay Bryce Underwood a couple $1 million or whatever it is. Nobody really knows, I don't think. Maybe Sam does, but I don't.
Well, I mean, now through the rules of the collective and the collectives as they go through the clearinghouse, that information is supposed to be discoverable. It's supposed to be.
We'll see. You know, I mean, one of the interesting things in your interview with Ward, Sam, of many, was that he seemed to be saying on NIL contracts that any contract of 600 or less or 599 or less is, we don't care. That's whatever. If it's more than 600, it goes into, quote, I heard him say this, a computer program. Did you hear that?
I did.
Okay. So presumably someone has designed a computer program. And if the contract is more than $600, it goes into the program. And this algorithm decides somehow whether this is kosher or not. Now, how that's decided or what this algorithm is, I have no idea. And then if it decides it's not kosher, it goes to some arbitration process. Who knows what that looks like? Now, what's going on there is maybe the hope is from an administrative point of view, that's the end of it. You go to arbitration and you win or lose. I don't know. I don't know if they could adjust. They could say, oh no, 50,000 is too much here, but 30,000 is okay. I don't know. But I have a hunch it's just going to be the old Clarabelle. It's yes or no. And so you've got a problem there because, first of all, I don't think that's enforceable. I think the first person out there who loses is going to file a lawsuit, and that lawsuit is going to have standing, and it's going to be cognizable.
All right, we got to get to a break right now. So let's get to this break and we'll be back on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA.
Clear on the radio.
I was about to throw in a plug for Hail to the Victors. We had to go to break. I was like, I had it lined up. I'm gonna do it when we come back. But yeah, there's an interesting point that Matt Brown made in his article that I want to get into.
Okay. You guys have free run right now. Sam got out of the air chair, so feel free to say what you need.
We're running the show now?
Yeah,
go ahead. You got a minute or two while Sam
do your plug. Do the plug for HTV.
Hail to the Victors 2025. Go to MGoBlog.com/25. It's more fun to do it on the radio. I think anyone who's such a fan that they're actually watching us in between the taping, they're
already on the kick. They already bought it, so
there are people. Yeah, like I see the names down the list, right? Like Kim Lautner and Ike Harris and Steve Horn. And we know all you guys. We're familiar with your names now.
Yeah, we know you.
You know, along
your mailing address too.
Yeah,
along those lines, Seth, last year when you did the big book, and we were over at Venue doing, passing.
That was fun. That was a great event. You guys did a great job there. That was fun.
Well, what interested me was, they were doing autographs and or signatures on the book. And so I talked to every person who came through the line, and I was so impressed with how smart, thoughtful, accomplished, interesting.
You're Michigan fans. Why are you so shocked that we're smart?
Well, I mean, it was, God bless them. I mean, they were so good. One after another, after another, after another. These people were just impressive human beings. And so
hashtag the Michigan difference.
Yeah, it
was cool. I walk in and I knew a whole bunch of people on the line, friends, listeners, random people I've met along the way. There were so many people that I knew at that event. That was a great event. It was fun.
Yeah, it was.
I love our readers. We're doing another event this weekend, by the way, just on Saturday. We have the Shutdown Fullcast crew, or Channel 6, we want to call them now. They're coming in. So Michigan fans won their annual charity thing. We actually raised over $1 million, I think, just with Michigan fans. So they had their annual charity to help refugees who come in through Atlanta. And Michigan fans, as we do every year, raise the most money for the Charity Bowl. So we get to have them. We're going to do one of their shows on Saturday at the library at 6 o'clock.
The downtown district library, as we talked about with Rich Reddy on Tuesday.
Yep. And then we're going to go over to Venue and have drinks afterwards. So
That's
people want to come and hang out with these wonderful, awesome, nice people. I also didn't mention Ruth Maynard, who's always in the chat too. I love Ruth. Ruth makes me plum cake. She's my favorite. So I can't wait to see everybody. As Craig mentions, it's a we lean very nerdy, but I love this fan base. I love this readership.
What's really fun, Seth, and we talked about this with Rich briefly on Tuesday, is that Michigan gets credit for a certain amount of fundraising, but you know as well as I do that all the Slippery Rock donations that are in there, and the other donations that are Michigan fans, but they know Michigan crushes it anyway, so they put it under some other school that is just fun because it probably makes fun of it.
We've got side projects. So this year, I think our side project was Protect Trans Kids University, which I think beat Ohio State. I got to go back and look and make sure because it was close at the end.
We're back in about 10 seconds on radio, guys.
All right.
Stand by.
Yeah, I had a book mention.
And we're back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the big1050.com. Before we get back to the MGoBlog Roundtable, want to tell those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle, you should get on board with Brighton Ford. Why, you ask? Because our friends at Brighton Ford, they have the deals that can't be beaten. We tell you all the time, our friend John Cuter, he makes it happen at Brighton Ford. Brighton Ford is the ultimate destination for your new car or truck. Head in, settle into the seat of your favorite vehicle. Take control as you drive off the lot in a car or truck that was meant for you. Go to Brighton Ford, call 1-800-NEW-FORD, or go online at BrightonFord.com and take advantage of employee pricing, which means you pay what we pay. From now through June 30th, well-qualified lessees can lease a 2025 Ford F-150 for as low as $266 a month with only $3,500 down. Plus first payment, taxes, doc fee, title license, and state fees due at signing, security deposit waive, 7,500 miles per year, 24-month lease. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD or see dealer for full details. Again, call 1-800-NEW-FORD today. Employee pricing means you pay what we pay. Brighton Ford, the official Ford sponsor of the Big 1050 WTKA. Seth Fisher, again, this is Hail to the Victors time of year. Can you tell the folks one more time about the campaign, how they can get their Hail to the Victors copy?
Get on mgoblog.com/25 and follow to the Kickstarter if you want to. Now, I was going to bring up, because it was part of our conversation earlier, Matt Brown from Extra Points has a fantastic article in there where he's the guy who's like the expert on NIL and everything. He talks to all the athletic directors. And one of the things he brings up, leading back to our last conversation, is that Michigan is so well placed. And I think this is one of the reasons, actually, why a Michigan State grad was trying to affect this law, because they know that if the system does end up being, no one thinks this is going to be the system in the end, but if the system does end up being that there is a salary cap based off of NIL deals having to be the actual value of, right? You actually have to get something back for your money, right? You're not just allowed to give players money. They actually have to have some sort of value in advertising, right, in order to be to justify these deals. If that's true and that is enforced, one of the things that Matt Brown says in this article is that Michigan is in the best position of almost anybody. Michigan and Texas are really kind of at the top because of our position, because we have Ann Arbor, but it's also close to Detroit because Michigan fans have all this money, and Michigan fans are all over the place. There are just so many options for deals that are like, $599.10 or $599.13, right? Like you can have so many but bigger deals too. There's just so many opportunities for Michigan to play in that space that we haven't really realized yet. And I think that you're going to end up seeing Michigan players all over the place because that is somewhere that they're not going to regulate. That is the spot where you're not going to be able to. And if you need to make up a difference between a defensive end and a cornerback, and you want to get both, the way that Michigan could actually affect that is, it's the same way that they were doing it in the NFL. The Jets and the Giants were doing this, and other teams complained they made it part of the cap. But there's no cap on this right now. So Michigan could actually have those deals, and this is what they did with Underwood and whatnot. In addition, so you can actually give them less money out of the pool, right? But then have these other deals lined up. And I think that that's what Michigan is probably looking at long term, is having donor types ready to go with these things, with deals that are actually going to be valuable, like the Mike Morse thing that we saw, right? You've seen these ads before, and those are actually very valuable for Michigan, more so than other schools. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that, and I think Michigan is going to leverage that in order to solve some of these, do I want to pay this guy or this guy? Take the one who's more telegenic and give him a different kind of deal that actually ends up being the same kind of money.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think parsing the just the validity of these deals is just going to be an endeavor that is going to prove to be fruitless, I think, in the long run. It's just too subjective a measure for schools to be undertaking, in my opinion. I think the best you can do is make sure they're doing a service, an actual service for this money that they're getting, that they aren't just being paid just to show up.
Yeah,
I think that's as far as you can go.
They'll have some sort of matrix, and I think that they'll have to lean liberal. They're just going to be like, listen, if it's close, right? If it looks anything, that's the system that might work. I think that that's not the system that anyone is really expecting to come out of this. I think the system that people are expecting to come out of this is Ohio State and Alabama and Colorado are going to get their guys in charge of, getting on the board, and they're going to make sure that certain schools can get away with whatever they want to and certain schools can't, because that's how it's always been in the NCAA. And I can't imagine that they're going to have a different system. And that's why they're for it. That's why those schools are pushing so hard for this, because they know that the regulation is not going to be even. It's just going to be one of those things where we don't care about 99% of these, and then if Michigan does something and we're mad at them over something else, we're going to come down hard and cancel the NIL deal for their quarterback and let them flounder in the wind. It's just going to be that. That's the system they're expecting.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, I mean, isn't part of this part of the rules that they cannot force schools to follow rules that are in violation of state laws, right? Isn't that part of this?
Yeah.
So if the state law in Michigan passes, then what? I mean, it's just is what it is. Michigan State, Eastern, Western, Central, the schools they're here in the state, they're just going by their own set of rules. They can follow the NCAA rules if they choose to, but not because they have to. So
yeah, I have a certain disconnect, and I'm sure some of the listeners will tell me why I'm a dope on this, but Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's mentor, is a Michigan graduate and gives millions of dollars to Michigan, especially the law school, I believe. So there's something wrong with that? Charlie Munger gives millions of dollars because he doesn't, quote, get anything out of it. My suspicion is Charlie Munger got something out of it, in that, it made him feel better, or it was a place he wanted to donate money to, or it was, that there was enough there for him to do this. So if he can do that, how come Jolynn Ellison can't do the same thing? And, I'm having a hard time sort of figuring out, this construct. People could give money to a building, to create a building, and that's okay, but they can't give money to a human. I mean, I know someone out there tomorrow or today will say you're an idiot. What
makes one pure and what makes one not? I hear you. I hear you.
I mean, so I'm having a hard time with that, and I'm
these moral judgments that we place on these things. Who places the moral value places the moral values on them. You're right. It's an interesting question to judge, but I do want to get a little bit of NBA draft. Eight Big Ten picks. One of which was Danny Wolf to the Brooklyn Nets, which we predicted yesterday on the midweek peak with Steven said, hey, he's going to be picked by the Brooklyn Nets. Now, it was just Brooklyn had 5 first-round picks, so odds were with us that Brooklyn was going to probably pick Danny, right? And that's where he wound up. A little bit of a slide on number 27, but curious if you had any takeaways from last night's draft. One to me was, man, they were really sold on Yakuchonis being like this big. They're really sold on him being this big time guy, and that the Heat got a steal at 20. I think he's a good fit for the Heat. I think he'll be a good player for the Heat, but I didn't think he was a steal at 20. I thought that's like an appropriate place for him to be picked. I didn't think he was Franz Wagner. I didn't think he was like a lottery guy, a 6'7", pick and roll dynamo. I think he's a good 6'4", 6'5" pick and roll guy that turned it over a little bit too much, was a streaky shooter, and could be a good pro, but I didn't think he was this dynamic lottery dude.
He's a project. He's a project, and I can't predict that he'll ever be even a decent player in the NBA. In my opinion, he might. I'll tell you what was most interesting about the draft. Rutgers has 2 players. They have number 2 and number 5. Did they win any games this year? I don't remember. How can you have 2 of the best 5 players in the draft and not win any games?
Crazy.
I mean,
something about something, doesn't it?
Everyone said exactly what was going to happen, right? Last year, a year ago, everyone goes, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey are going to Rutgers. And we're like, oh, yeah, they're both going to go top 5 in the draft, and Rutgers is not going to win anything. Everyone said the same thing. Everyone had the same exact deal. There weren't a whole lot of surprises. I think Danny Wolf falling behind some other centers. Not even being the first Jewish guy taken is a little.
Wait, there was another Jewish guy taken before Danny Wolf?
Yeah, the Nets by his own team. Yeah, the Nets took a guy out of Israel, Ben Seraph. One spot ahead of him.
Yeah, maybe Brooklyn has some theory going there.
They have a lot of synagogues, so there's that.
Yeah.
I'm getting off that topic. It does a little annoy me that because Danny used his Israeli nationalization in order to play Israeli ball for a little bit, that like on the list, like if you go up on Wikipedia right now or go on the NBA's page, he's listed as coming from Israel, not from the United States. And I'm like, no, man, like we developed that guy. We get credit for that.
He's from Chicago.
Yeah. Now credit the country that developed that. He goes to Israel for a little bit and he gets the flag. No, that's not their flag. It's our flag. Yeah, but I say that I could go to Israel. I have a Hebrew name. I could go and become an Israeli citizen if I wanted to. But no, we're Americans.
Yeah, I think Dylan Harper to the Spurs. I think the Spurs are gonna take another step as long as Wemby has to be healthy. The Ace Bailey pick is going to be a really interesting case study. He tried to maneuver his way out of the top 5, and it didn't work. Now, will it work for the Jazz that they picked him anyway, even though he didn't want to be there?
Sam, I didn't get this. Was this because he hates Salt Lake City?
I don't know why he had a problem with the Jazz. I don't know why.
They water down their liquor.
Yeah. I mean,
don't know why.
And I never heard of someone trying to drop further down in the draft to get less money. Was that their? I mean,
well, you try to go to a better team so you can have a better career.
Washington was one of the teams he liked, so that's not all it. Because Washington sucks.
And every pick pretty much in the first round was traded, so there's no guarantee that the pick below you is a better team because every pick seems to have gotten traded.
Yeah.
So
that's bizarre.
I think if you're Utah in that position, you have a guy like Ace Bailey, and you you get the guy, right? And then you have the chip. So if he doesn't want to play for you, you can trade him to somebody and still get value. But you're going to get more value that way than if you don't take the best player. And who comes after that? Jeremy Fears? Like there's, I don't remember who was picked at right after him, but like it wasn't like there was definitely in this draft a top level, right? Like if you got a Cooper Flag, you came out well, right? And after that, and I think Ace Bailey was probably the bottom of that tier for me, of where you're really going to get a major difference maker in this draft.
Truth be told, outside of Flag, I can't say there's a single guy in this draft who said, "Oh yeah, that guy."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they're all.
Dylan Harper's going to be a dude, right? Like Ace Bailey
Yeah,
has skills that translate directly to NBA playing. Like there's some of those things are just like, okay, who is the guy the Sixers got? Like that guy looked like the guy from Baylor. I can't remember his name. There were like there are players there. Edgecombe, yeah. Like that guy's a player.
We got to get out of here, guys. We will see you next week. Well, no, we won't, because we'll be off.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
So we'll see you in 2 weeks, the roundtable. The rest of you will see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK, online at the Big1050.com.
Maybe Ward can sit in for you again next week.